What if immortality was actually possible? Young Victor Frankenstein loses his mother and dedicates his entire life to one obsession: cheating death. He actually pulls it off, but what he creates is nothing like what he imagined. If you're new here, subscribe to @reviews of films. We cover the films actually worth your time. Guillermo del Toro's Frankenstein came out in 2025, and it does something most adaptations of this story have never managed. Alright, it actually stays faithful to what Mary Shelley wrote while still feeling completely like a Del Toro film. Having now watched it, I'll say this plainly. This is the best Frankenstein film ever made. Let's start with what the film gets absolutely right, because it gets a lot right. Visually, this is Del Toro operating at full power. Every frame feels considered, almost obsessive in its attention to Gothic atmosphere. Cold stone corridors, candlelight that barely holds back the dark, laboratory sequences that feel like sacred rituals gone wrong. The production design earns every dollar spent on it. This is the kind of film where you find yourself pausing just to sit inside a single image, and Jacob Elordi's creature, the prosthetics, the pallid skin, the seams running across his body like a map of everything wrong with what Victor did, is one of the more striking physical transformations you'll see in recent memory. It doesn't feel like a costume. It feels like a condition. And then there's Elordi himself. He's been a recognizable face in Hollywood for a while now, charming his way through projects that didn't always challenge him. But here, under Del Toro's direction, surrounded by a cast that pushes him, opposite Oscar Isaac and Mia Goth, something clicks. He plays the creature with a raw, unguarded quality that the film absolutely needs. There's a scene early on where the creature discovers water and just plays in it. No dialogue, no grand statement, just this enormous, terrifying looking being experiencing simple wonder for the first time. It's one of the most unexpectedly moving moments in the film, and it works entirely because of what Elordi does with his body and his eyes. Del Toro has always been good at drawing out performances people didn't or they were capable of, and this is a clear example of that. Oscar Isaac as Victor Frankenstein is equally compelling in a different register. Where Elordi plays openness, Isaac plays obsession. In the laboratory scenes especially, and there are stretches with almost no dialogue, you watch a man slowly losing the thread between genius and madness. And Isaac never makes it theatrical. He makes it quiet and frightening, which is harder. Charles Dance plays Victor's father with his usual gravitas, though the early childhood sequences don't quite deliver the emotional foundation they seem to be reaching for. The backstory lands a little flat before the story truly catches fire. But here's what Del Toro is actually doing with this material and why it's worth your full attention. This isn't simply a retelling of a scientist playing God and facing the consequences. Del Toro reframes the whole thing as a grief narrative. Victor doesn't pursue the conquest of death out of pure intellectual arrogance. He pursues it because loss has hollowed him out, and he cannot accept what life keeps taking from him. The Prometheus parallel is there. The myth of a man stealing fire from the divine and paying for it in suffering. But Del Toro adds something underneath it. The desire to create life is also, for Victor, the desire to refuse grief, to refuse the basic terms of being human. That reframing changes everything about the creature. Del Toro positions him not as a monster, but as Victor's shadow, the externalized form of everything Victor buries inside himself. Victor creates, but cannot love what he's made. The creature desperately wants to be loved, but has never been given the language for it. Victor drowns in crowds and still feels alone. The creature is physically isolated, rejected everywhere he goes, and yet somehow remains more emotionally honest than his creator. Victor denies his failures. The creature sits with his. There's a line of thinking in the film, I'd never spoken outright, but felt throughout, that asks whether our deepest fears don't live inside us, but actually become us. Whether what we refuse to face eventually walks out the door wearing our face. Mia Goth's Elizabeth adds another dimension to this. The way she sees both men, the Mahumnai, the beautiful one incapable of real connection, and the terrifying one starved for it, quietly reinforces everything the film is arguing. Her presence doesn't overwhelm the story, but it anchors its emotional logic. The film also holds on to Mary Shelley's frame structure. The Arctic expedition, a captain being told this story against a backdrop of frozen emptiness, and Del Toro uses it well. The final image of the creature walking into the white horizon carries real weight. There's a reading of this film where the Arctic isn't just a setting, but a symbol. The blank space where all the things Europe refused to reckon with go to disappear. The creature and that frozen landscape share something. Both are marked by violence, both are treated as empty until they're useful, and both outlast the people who exploited them. Del Toro doesn't push this reading aggressively, which is maybe a missed opportunity for the film to operate on a third level, but the image lingers. Where the film stumbles is in its own confidence. Del Toro clearly trusts his audience. His best work always has. But Frankenstein occasionally forgets that and starts underlining its thesis more than once. The idea that Victor is the true monster is a powerful one. You don't need to say it aloud 3 times. Some of the action sequences, particularly a creature escape that feels closer to an Uncharted video game than a Gothic horror film, break the emotional spell the movie works hard to cast. And the finale, for all its visual beauty, doesn't quite deliver the catharsis the preceding 2.5 hours have been building toward. Some characters get resolutions that feel too easy for what they've been through. At 2.5 hours, the runtime never actually drags. The film has enough momentum and visual richness to carry you through. But the second half, where the creature's journey of self-discovery takes center stage, moves at a slower temperature. Del Toro gets philosophically close to Shelley in these passages, which is admirable. He just doesn't always trust the quietness to do its work without adding explanation on top of it. What stays with you, though, is the central paradox the film builds and refuses to resolve. A creature who looks like death personified, desperately reaching for love. A man who looks like everything the world rewards, completely unable to give it. Del Toro's conclusion, stated or not, is that monstrousness is not a biological condition. No, it's a social one. It's what happens when the powerful define what deserves to be seen, loved, and called human. Yeah, that's Shelley's argument, and it's Del Toro's too. And on that level, this film delivers. Frankenstein is not a perfect film, but it's a serious one made by someone who loves the source material enough to take real risk with it, and who trusts that audiences can hold complexity in a landscape where most horror either goes for pure sensation or pure spectacle. That seriousness feels like something worth showing up for. See it for the performances. Stay for what it's quietly saying underneath all the Gothic atmosphere and stitched together flesh. This has been at reviews of films. If you found this useful, subscribe. We'll keep covering the ones worth the conversation.